Some good music we've chosen, so thanks, Al. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Scott Benjamin. I oversee sales and marketing for FunSpot Manufacturing in beautiful downtown Hartwell, Georgia. We are excited to be bringing you the 6th installment of our Tuesday Town Hall. And hopefully most of you have been here before, but if you have not, welcome. And we're excited that you're here with us this afternoon. We've got about 50 minutes of content and questions and answers that we're going to have for you. But before I introduce Frank, who's going to be speaking to us today and taking some questions and answers, I just wanted to kind of give a quick recap over some of the things that we've talked about in the past. If you hit our townhall.funspot.com website, you'll see that we've talked about everything from cleaning to what you need to do to reopen your park with the team, the staff, and there's just a lot of good content there and some additional resources. So hope that you'll take the time to visit that and click in and see what you can find there. Just before coming on, I wanted to give you guys a best practice. I do a Google search for our Google alert for trampoline parks, indoor adventure parks, and adventure parks, those three things. And so every day about noon, I get an alert update on each of those keywords. Just a good way to keep up on what's going on, really not only domestically, but across the world with each of those keywords. And one of the ones today was a park in North Carolina, a news report about what they're doing to get ready to get open, what attractions they think they're going to keep closed for a short amount of time, what they're going to do for cleaning and all that. So just a good opportunity for you to keep your pulse on what's happening in our industry is using Google Alerts if you're not doing that already. Well, last week, one of the things that kind of came up as we consider reopening our FECs, our adventure parks, our trampoline parks was how do we engage kind of that 16 to 21-year-old staff? We were already asking them to keep their head on a swivel and blow their whistle and correct young kids and interact with adults and do some level of cleaning. But now we're asking them to do an even higher level of all that, plus maybe wear a mask or some protective equipment and just engage at a whole different level. And how do we lead that? And so I reached out on LinkedIn for some resources and had connected previously with Frank Schwartz under some different things that we do together. And Frank said, hey, I'd love to come. And so I invited Frank to come. He's going to talk about really leadership, kind of what we do as leaders, his organization. He can tell you a little bit about that. And then really this is an interactive time, so I hope that you will use the chat feature to engage with questions as he proposes them, or if you have some thoughts that come up from there. So Frank, I'm going to kick it over to you and allow you just to kind of add anything you want on your introduction and just kind of get into some content with us.
Awesome. Yeah, that was quite the shot there, that giant head. I wear a size like 14 hat or something. It's a big head. So hey, thank you guys very much for having me. I appreciate it. Yes, Scott and I do know each other from a men's leadership group that we belong to that functions through free outdoor workouts. Basically what it is you get up early in the morning and you go and put your body through horrifying workouts, and by doing that you get to you build friendships, and then eventually those friendships kind of turn into deeper friendships, and you start looking at your life and going, man, I could actually make some impact and do some good things in the world, and you find guys to do that with, and so that's part of what we do and why we do it. Just to give you an idea, I spent the last 12, 13 years running a company that's a small corporate communications company. It had some large enterprise clients, and I was getting frustrated and getting annoyed with it all and just kind of over it to some degree. And then at some point, and this is gospel truth, I was making a video for a very large bank, which happens to be in America, if you know what I mean. And they, thanks, Brian, you got it, so that's good. But I was making a video about a person in the office who wore too much cologne and or perfume, and how that leader, manager, right? There's a difference between a leader and a manager, right? So this manager was supposed to engage with HR, who also would bring in this special group within the HR function that deals with, you know, sensitive situations, and teach that manager how to talk to this person who has the perfume problem, so that then the other people who had been complaining about the perfume problem on the floor, so that then they would be okay, right? I mean, that was, and I'm making this video, and they're spending tens of thousands of dollars to make this video and do all this kind of stuff. And all I could think to myself was, this is the most ridiculous exercise in non-leadership that I've ever seen. I was just, and I thought, I mean, I'm happy to take their money, right? But I realized as I'm sitting in there, and then looking back over my whole career of doing this kind of stuff, I thought, I've been working on the wrong end of the problem all along, right? When I started looking at my own personal purpose and what I felt like I was on earth to do, it wasn't making, you know, training videos for large companies and working on their internal communications and things like that. What I realized is that if we're really going to make any difference in the world, that John Maxwell had it right. And that is that everything, and I mean everything, falls and rises on the leadership of whatever organization or whatever it is. Everything that happens in the world falls and rises on leadership. And I thought, man, that's it. The buck stops there. And so my job now, as being a trainer with G3L Leadership, what I try and do is we have a program that we go through. It's a 4-quadrant program, and it's hidden right there in the name, right? So there's a G, and then there's 3 L's. First, in order to be a virtuous leader, you've got to get right. And that means get yourself properly aligned, right? It doesn't mean like right, like correct or morally right or anything like that. It means if you can imagine a ship, you know, or a boat being turned on its side, right? You've got to get that thing upright. You've got to get that thing properly aligned in order to get it through the water again, right? Otherwise, it's just going to be real slow and not get a whole lot of anywhere. Make sense? Feel free to nod your heads for the few if you're so inclined. Right? So first you got to get right. That means you've got to be the right kind of person in order to lead appropriately. The second thing you got to do is you got to live right. Once you learn what to do, once you start developing those positive habits in yourself, it's time for you to teach those things to other people and start having influence in the men and the women around you. Then you got to lead right. There's a lot that goes into that. And the whole purpose of those things is getting right, living right, and leading right, so that ultimately you can do that 3rd L, which is leave right. You got to lead right so you can leave right. Because ultimately, and I don't know why you got into the business. Maybe it's just super margin and you just love the fact that trampoline business makes you a ton of money and it's no work at all, and you just sit back and roll in piles of cash. Maybe that's how it is. Scott, if that's the case, by the way, sign me up.
Understood. We'll presentation to you shortly.
Right. I have a funny feeling it's not entirely like that. So probably chances are you got into this for some other reason. But ultimately what you want to do as a leader is what you're hoping to do, I think, is to leave legacy in some way. Right. You want to leave something behind. You want to, whether that's in the lives of the young people that work for you, whether that's in the communities in which you serve as an entertainment venue, right? You got into this to leave something behind. And so that's what we try and do, is we try and teach people how to get themselves right, get their organizations right, become effective people so that they can have an effective organization, so ultimately they can leave the legacy behind that they want. All right? Any questions about any of that? Okay, a couple disclaimers. Number one, this is interactive, okay? I'll take questions and comments along the way. Don't hesitate to say anything. I don't think that Al is your boss. Correct me if I'm wrong. Al, not really, right?
That's too much power. That's too much power.
Right, so I don't think you're going to get fired from anything, right? You're here voluntarily, and you didn't pay to be here, at least that I'm aware of. They certainly didn't cut me in. I'm just kidding. But so feel free to make comments along the way. It's kind of a no holds barred kind of a thing, right? Type in whatever you like, make funny comments, make nasty comments. I don't really care. It's all good to me. And ask whatever questions that you have. The other thing I'll tell you is, in way of disclaimer, is I can't tell you everything. So naturally, I'm going to ask to follow up with you later, and you're going to follow up with me later if you have questions or concerns, and I'll give you my contact information at the end. You can find me. Email is usually the safest and easiest way to do that. But part of the reason that we do these kinds of things, right, is because we want to help. And so if you have further follow-up or further questions, if you need other kinds of leadership help, obviously that's part of what I'm here for, is to be able to do that, right? The next thing, the third thing is, and you need to know this going right out of the gate too, is everything I say comes from a genuine, and I know it's hard to believe because you're all strangers, and well, most of you are strangers in some way or other, right? But everything I say comes from a place of love. And I don't mean, I love Al, he seems like a nice guy, but I don't mean like I'm attracted to Al necessarily, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that I love human beings. I think that we all live a little too far below the privilege that we have and that we've been blessed with, especially as Americans, and business owners too, right? I mean, I think we live a little below our privilege sometimes. And I think there's just more that we can get out of people. And so everything that I say today is going to come from a place of love. I can't lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be kind to you to save your feelings. Chances are I won't see most of you again. So you can hate me as much as you like. It's fine. You don't have to feel bad about it either, right? If I have something wrong, come at me and tell me. Let me know. But if I have it right and you don't like it, then, I just remember I didn't do that to you. So I apologize in advance. The last thing I'll say about it is if you came looking for the 5 quick tips on how to motivate 16 to 21-year-olds, you're in the wrong place, right? There's no 5 quick tips about anything in life. Certainly not 5 quick tips about something like that, right? So this isn't that. So it's going to, everything we talk about is going to be with the idea of having a lot of hard work put into it and becoming something out of it. Any questions about any of that before we move on? Scott, any comments you want to make about it?
I think that cues us up. We're at a size of a group where if you felt like you wanted to unmute yourself and ask a question to Frank, feel free to do that, and you can also use the chat feature that is down at the bottom of your screen.
And someone just sent it to me privately, so I won't say who it was because maybe they didn't want everyone to know, but that is correct. There's no pixie dust. I have nothing to sprinkle. I have no, I can't it's not like the guys on TV where it's like, just dial in and send me $20 and I'll send you this little vial of something you can, I don't know. It's not like that. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, most of everyone here is an owner operator of some sort of indoor park, right? And so when we start thinking about how are we going to motivate 16 to 21-year-olds, this is a timeless problem, I guess is the way to say it, because people have been trying to figure out exactly how to motivate 16 to 21-year-olds since there were 16 to 21-year-olds, right? And so the question that Scott put to me was, they're already burdened. They're already doing all these other things, just like he explained at the beginning there. And so now we're going to ask them to do more. And so I guess one of the questions I would have, and I would be interested to hear back from somebody, is what sorts of challenges do you have motivating them now? Are these like substandard workers? Are they just overwhelmed? Is this something that we know that they're going to struggle with because we've seen them struggle with other things? Or is this something we think they might struggle with because we know it's more and that kind of thing? So are we guessing, or is it for sure? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, everyone needs motivation.
Cheryl says everyone needs motivation, and that's true. We all do need motivation. Okay, so I'm gonna assume that I'm assuming that we're assuming, right?
And Frank, I'll jump in for a minute.
Please.
I'll just throw this out there because I've hired, recruited, trained all these wonderful kids for all these family fun centers over the years, and this generation is no different than any other. I think what everyone's going to be challenged a little bit more with now is parents saying, "Ooh, I'm not so sure it's safe for you to go back. Ooh, we're getting X amount on unemployment. Why would we want to give that up for the next 7 weeks?" There are just a lot of little things now, and it all goes back to the leadership. But I think if you could share with everybody some of the best leadership tips to really bond with your team, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a really good point, right? And so to your point, Cheryl, that if these are kids that are saying, you know, their parents are saying, we don't know if we want you to go back or whatever like that, I can't help you with that. Nobody can help you with that, right? That's something you got to figure out on your own. You hire different kids. I don't know. So here's what I would say. From a leadership standpoint, particularly with this group, age group of kids, and these may be things you already know, right? And so if this is just sort of, kind of reinforcement of things that you already know and believe, then awesome. If this is new information for you, also awesome, right? But the first question is, you got to dial back a little bit, and a little bit to Cheryl's point is, what would you say? Like, you got to start with hiring the right kids, right? You know, I'm going to turn that chat off because I just realized you'll handle that, right, Al? You'll handle the chat. I'm not going to look at that because it just distracted. But you've got to make sure. Yeah, thank you. You got to make sure you're hiring the right kind of people to begin with, right? So maybe your hiring practices are not up to snuff. Maybe you're not asking them the right kinds of questions, right? Every fit in any organization, and particularly with kids this age, is going to be dependent somewhat on the culture that you have at your organization, but also the culture that they come from, right? If they're used to working at a fast food place, and they were, if they flunked out of a fast food place, you don't have a whole lot of hope here, right? That they're going to come to you guys and be amazing, right? I don't know what sorts of things you ask them when you get ready to hire them, and I'm sure it's things like, do you like working with kids? Do you like working with people? Things along those lines, right? But outside of being qualified in some way, uniquely to do the work that you're going to ask them to do, if they have some sort of degree in cleaning or something like that, which I don't know if that exists. But outside of that, you're going to have to ask them questions about who they are and what kind of person they want to become. Kids at this age, especially, are looking for belonging. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves, which really, I think, probably most of us want the same thing, right? Go ahead, Al.
So we have a couple comments in here, and they all kind of go together, so I thought you could tackle them all at one time.
Sure.
So Luis just kind of made a comment, but everyone at this moment wants to do their part from their feedback, so that's understandable. And then Wendy said, difficult to engage this age group, seem not to have much of a work ethic that gives pride in a job well done, but a lot of just doing the minimum and no change unless personally engaged by leaders. And then Brian followed that up with, this is a good opportunity to get rid of the less desirable and make our expectation very clear up front. Again, this is not me saying this.
No, it's the truth though, right? I mean, it's,
And then our own Nate Flock said, how to mitigate fear in young adults in an intense global situation and already demanding workplace would be helpful. So I think that all kind of bleeds together. And then Cheryl has another question. So I'll let you answer that, and then I'll chime back in.
So, and I don't know what the regulations are. I don't know where everyone is located necessarily. And so there's going to be obviously some certain restrictions and things about how you open and when you open and what kind of phasing goes into that or whatever. And you're going to have to follow that. Unfortunately, and again, I love you all. Brian's right. This is your opportunity. You could probably get people with master's degrees to come and clean your stuff right now, right? There's a pretty high unemployment. And so even the kids at Chick-fil-A are looking, right? And those are pretty good kids on the whole. Right. So now's a really good time to look and to say, hey, we have a different kind of environment over here. We do things a little bit differently. We have a different kind of culture, whatever it might be. Right. Generally speaking, kids at that age are looking for friends. They want to hang out with their friends. And Wendy, I appreciate what you're saying that they don't necessarily have the work ethic, but I'm gonna challenge on that just a little bit and say, if they don't have a reason to work, they're not going to work. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so the trick on our end, I think, as leaders, is we've got to give them a reason to work. We've got to help them understand the purpose and the greater vision of what we're trying to accomplish here. And look, this isn't easy, because if it was as simple as just putting the job out there and then saying, hey, we pay $12 an hour, or whatever the number is, right? And hoping for the cream to rise to the top, it's just not going to happen. right? So one of the questions we have to ask ourselves as leaders, I believe, is, are we the kind of person, are we the right kind of person that engenders trust and is worthy to be followed? And some of that comes with, oh, go ahead, Al.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I thought you, sorry.
No, sorry.
I saw you on mute. I thought you were coming. But are we the kind of people that are worthy to be followed? And so what are our daily habits? What do they see us doing? How involved are we with the business, with the everyday going on? Are we doing any cleaning? Are we doing any of that kind of stuff? Chances are good that many of you might be, right? I don't know that. But my suspicion is that many of you are. My suspicion is that, no offense, many of you aren't, right? Maybe you're not you didn't get into this to clean stuff. You didn't get into this to be on the show. You got into this because, whatever reason. And that would probably be the other part of this is not only do you need to be the right kind of person in terms of having the personal habits and things like that you want to see out of them, right? No one, and I promise, especially at that age, they are not going to work for you if you're not doing part of the work too. If you're just standing in the room going, I think you missed a spot there, John. They're going to hate you. They're going to hate you. And maybe you deserve it. No offense, right? And so I think it's a matter of being fully engaged with these kids. So you can't say that they're not engaged with you if you're not engaged with them, right? They are especially at this age, they are a mirror very much of the behavior that we present to them. They're going to give us that right back. Okay. And that's just a fact. Part of that's having kids at these ages. I was telling guys before everybody got on that, I've got 3 daughters that are teenagers and could easily work in, some of these kinds of places, right? And we find that at home and in other places too, that in order to motivate them, we have to be willing to do the things that we're asking them to do, right? And they need to see us do it. So I guess the real question, and this is a question for everybody, the question is, I guess, why are you in the business? What is it that motivated you to be here? What is your why? What is your purpose? What is your your desire, and why did you do this? Why did you get into this? Anybody?
Come on, we all know we got into it because we love having fun. I caught Scott jumping on a trampoline once. I know everybody out there does it.
Yeah, we are called Fun Spot, not Serious Spot. But I'd love to hear from like Jeremy Carroll or Tina or some of the owners that we know. Kind of answer Frank's question. How or what was it that really got you excited about being engaged in the family entertainment center space? Or Wendy? Is this like investment banking, 7 years, 7 figures? Is that how it works? No? Oh, okay. Well, there must be a better reason than that. I mean, it can be. Don't get me wrong.
No, I'm sure.
Business, but as we reopen, those question marks to get out.
So, what motivated you to be here in the first place? What was the reasoning? Why did you think, what, I'll get into that. That's a good spot. I'm gonna go there. And I agree with Cheryl. Probably some of it is because you like to have fun.
Okay, so Frank, since nobody else is going to help you out, I will again. I want you to look at my crystal ball, and I'm waving my hands over that crystal ball, and I see a husband and a wife and 2.5 kids. They have been on the birthday circuit for the last 10 weeks. They went to the gymnastics place. They went to all these different bowling. It doesn't matter. And they look at each other and they say, we could do this so much better. That's the first thing they say. Then they sit there and they say, I just had my kid's birthday party and it cost me $800. If I do the math and I multiply how many parties they had, man, this is an easy business to make lots of money. So those are 2 factors that definitely come into play. And the third is, oh my God, I hate my job. I am so bored at work. Look how much fun it would be to have a fun center. And I see heads nodding, so I know that people are sitting there saying, yeah, that was kind of us. Somebody said, is your crystal ball really that accurate all the time? I'm like, pretty much.
Sure. Right. If you have enough data to feed into the crystal ball, it becomes pretty clear, doesn't it, Cheryl? Right. I mean,
Absolutely.
You've seen it enough times, right? You're no longer predicting, you're just observing, right?
Sarah chimed in and really, I mean, right as Cheryl was starting to talk, and said, she's got 2 boys and she wanted a local park to take them to, and we see that across the country.
So go ahead, Al.
I was just gonna say, we just visited Myrtle Beach, that's about to open, and the child of the parents that opened this park has the whole park to herself right now as her homeschool, and it's their first park and everything, but they have ideas, and it was good to see that fresh enthusiasm of, we're about to open this park and the reasons. And when we go out to a park, I interview folks, and they give different reasons. Every single person gives a different reason. One group said that they opened it as a mission for teenagers to really just pour love and admiration into teenagers and give folks, a chance that didn't have a chance before. They went to every single high school in their area and made sure even the lesser high school had a chance to be offered jobs and everything, because they wanted, folks that did have a chance in life to give the folks at the bottom some advice, and vice versa, And then we have folks that, hey, there was just nothing to do in this town. And we wanted to give people something to do to stay out of trouble and things like that. We also hear that, there's financial reasons, of course, but I would say 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, most people say it for a very personal reason of, like Sarah said, she had 2 boys, or whatever the case may be, but it's usually to build up the community. And I would say that they are doing so by bringing in the younger help, the younger staff, and they are actually giving them more advice every day by just example than they are by telling them orders or anything like that. And I see myself, I had a lot of odd jobs when I was a kid, and I think about how did I want to be led back then, and how did I see it being implemented incorrectly, and then I go out and I lead younger groups that I lead via different avenues. So I think that that's something that I hear a lot of. It's building community and building up the younger generation to be the generation we think that they have every right to be, but they don't get the credit for being. So long-winded, but sorry about that.
No, but I think that's, and Al, I appreciate your comment, and Cheryl, yours as well, and certainly Sarah's. And I think that, to your point, and Cheryl kind of hit it, is what you're hearing and what you're observing and what people are telling you is the reason. And Wendy looks like she chimed in here and said, we started this because we saw that we could do a better job. And that's a good reason. And maybe I didn't say it the right way. So if you listen back to the recording and I said it the wrong way, forgive me. And because the reason that you do something is good, but the purpose for why you did the thing is better. I see that Brian has a hand up, so I'm going to call on him.
Oh, good. Yeah, I just wanted to ask first before I jumped in. Really quick, just to kind of share how we got into it, or how I got into it. My first job out of high school was a laser tag facility, right? And we gathered all of I am friends with over 30 people from that facility, a little tiny facility, still to this day. Like, we get together, we call ourselves zone heads. There's a whole culture around it, right? So when we got into it, that was the purpose. The purpose was to, one, chase my childhood. At least that's what my therapist says. And then 2, was to get out there and actually try to recreate that for these kids, to give them that opportunity to have that same experience that I had at that age, right?
There you go. Yep.
And that's when you're talking about the leadership and the importance. We had fantastic leaders that had little experience in that industry, but what they did have experience in was communicating with us on a one-to-one basis, but giving us very, very plain and simple guidelines, instructions, and expectations, right?
Yeah.
And that comment I made earlier, and I agree with Frank, by the way. I'm not here to necessarily make friends, so if you disagree with me, it's totally fine. But it's, by the way, anything that you feel inspired to do, write down while you're listening to everybody's comments, because you're going to know what to do in your park better than anybody else. Because you know your people, and those little promptings in your brain is what you should be doing. But when I said earlier, this is the time to get rid of dead wood, is sometimes one of the biggest problems that we have when we go into a park and we start to turn a park around. One of the biggest problems we have is the really, really good employees are just tired of the really, really bad employees. You know, doing their things, not sticking up to standards, but they're still there, right? They're still there. We just leave them there because it's hard to get rid of people. You know, there's an opportunity now where we have folks who will not come back because they're making more money on unemployment. I understand it.
Good.
But exactly. We've got to look at it and go, is that the person that has the right motivation to be here? You know, are we a McDonald's or are we an In-N-Out? You know, there's two different types of models there, and you can see that one is extremely successful for the employees, the other one is extremely successful for the company.
You're showing off which coast you live on, Brian.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on West Coast. I'm in Vegas.
Over here in the South, we would say Chick-fil-A. Okay,
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A versus, right?
That one works.
That's different. And Cheryl just hit it in the chat too, but and I was going to say the same thing, right? Hire slow, fire fast. And Brian's a really great point. You've got to make sure all the right people are on the bus to begin with before you ever leave, right? And if you don't have an expectation of them of a much higher standard, then they're certainly not going to give it to you. It just isn't going to happen, right? So the reason of I have two boys, or I thought I could do a better job, or all those kinds of things are very important, and they are right about here. And I'm going to say we need to just dive just a teeny bit deeper and say, well, what is the purpose behind that? You know what? And some of the things we heard from Al and from Brian, I think both kind of touched on those, and that is, I had an experience when I was X years old of working in this laser tag park, and I made lifelong friends, and that has shaped everything that I've done from here on out, right? And so his purpose then is to provide that kind of experience in order to make better human beings, right? Or whatever, you know, whatever the in order to is for you after that. But that's what you're shooting for, right? Is you have to have that kind. That's just my belief, right? Although it bears out in a lot of research and different things, right? But you have to have that kind of purpose in mind. It's got to go a few more layers deep past, you know, I have two boys and I thought it'd be cool for them to have a place that you could have just rented bouncy houses, you know, or built your own, or, you know, whatever. If really that was all you wanted was your two boys to have something cool to do, buy a lifetime membership. You don't need to run a business to do that, right? But if you looked and you thought, I am 100% dedicated to a safe, fun, and, you know, whatever, clean place where families can come and be families, especially now, because there's not a lot of places where they can come and be families, right? They can go outside, but they're looking for other things to do. They're about sick of walking around, and I know everyone bought bikes, but you know, they're only going to use those so long, right? They're going to need more to do than just bike around, right? And so whatever that thing is that provides that passion for you is what you've got to articulate to them, right? We use an acronym called VAPE. And it's easy to remember because it's such a ridiculous habit. But the V stands for vision. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about your personal purpose and your personal vision for why it is you're doing what you're doing, right? And then you've got to take that vision, and it's got to be crystal clear in your head. And then the A is to articulate that vision. You've got to be able to say that to the people that you work with in a way that also influences them, right? So you have your vision, you articulate that clearly to those kids that you work with, and then you persuade. You provide influence to them. And you can influence them. I mean, some people think influence is coercion, right? Well, if you don't do this, I'll fire you. Or if you do this, I'll pay you, you know, or whatever the thing, right? It might be, right? Coercion and sort of control is not the way to handle, especially kids in this particular age group, right? they want to be influenced. They want to be loved. They want to be motivated. And it's not enough for us. And I don't know if, Al looks pretty young, but it's not enough for us, Gen Xers to sit back and go, these dang kids just don't have a good work ethic. And that might be true, but I think they do have a good work ethic. We just don't know how to connect with them, because our work ethic was very much, we were motivated by the parents that we had, boomers and that sort of thing, where it really was a culture of, well, you'll do it because I said so. And so if the boss said so, we were just like, sounds good. We'll just do that, right? And we're having that same expectation of them, and that's just not how they function. I don't know why it's that way. It just is. I'm not interested in the therapeutic reasons and, getting into all that kind of stuff, behind the scenes of why they feel that way, right? I can only tell you, I'm an end user, right? I can only tell you what I observe, and that is, it's different for them. And if you're not willing to change to meet that, then you're going to get left behind on that, right? Al, go ahead.
I just, to your point, even Robin and a few others in the Cheryl and Sarah are making just points to really just back you up there. I mean, Robin said, at this moment, we're all looking at things very differently compared to how they viewed things pre-COVID. And he said it is his opinion, but he feels that parks will have more motivated staff if the staff really feel like they're helping people. There are a few parks that we deal with in Sweden where the trampoline parks are seen to be more of a club rather than a day out style center, which is visited a few times a year. These parks have revisit rates much higher than other areas, which inevitably bring in more income for park owners. And I think that's a very valid point, because I know that, anybody that's working, if they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, they put that much more effort into it. So all the comments are just kind of melding into the same thing to amalgamate the same idea.
Yeah, perfect. Because that's the thing. Look, so in my former, well, it's not even former, the business still runs. I just don't have a daily involvement in it. But when I was building the corporate video and communications business, we hired a lot of millennials, young kids right out of college, somewhat on the slightly olderish end of the kind of kids we're talking about here. And everyone was always like, oh, freaking millennials, they're just the worst. They don't work hard. They don't want to. And we found that to be absolutely not the case, because we gave them something to believe in, right? We connected them to the purpose that we had. So again, just to keep using Brian as an example, since he kind of brought it up, and it's already stuck in my head, right? So if his belief is that a fun park should be a place where a young person comes to define who they are, to build lifelong friends, and to provide a safe place for families to enjoy themselves and bond deeper. It makes better husbands, it makes better fathers, it makes better wives, right? If they bring their children to a safe place where they can enjoy themselves. The only people that you should be hiring are people who believe that. So whatever questions you have to ask to get that information out of those kids, that's all you need to know. I don't care where they worked before. I don't care how much they made before. I don't care about any of it. I paid people, and look, I'm not bragging about this. It's the money that I had at the time when we were building the business, right? But we paid right at, or maybe even a little under market rate as best we could. And we were too small in the beginning to offer things like health insurance and all that kind of stuff, right? I just didn't have it. It wasn't there. I couldn't do it. But we had people who, when I thought the business was going to go down about 6 years ago, and we were on our way to tanking out of control because I was just bleeding cash, recession was gone, but I made some terrible egotistical choices that put us in a really bad spot, right? And so as we're coming down and falling down this giant hole, I got rid of the dead weight. Thank you, Brian, right? I got rid of those people. And the few people that were left, when I said, look, we're going down, go find a job, they said, we think you'll be back. We believe in what you're doing, and we're not leaving until you fire us. And they were the ones that weathered the storm, right? They were the ones that came and stood through the whole thing. And then when we came out the other end of it, ended up being much better off. And some of them, now they have, all of them have moved on to other things now, bigger and better things. But they stayed because they believed what I believed about what we were doing and why we were doing it, right? So the questions you have to ask these kids have to do with your personal purpose. And if you're not connected to that personal purpose and why you're doing what you're doing, and you can't articulate that in a clear way to them, then you'll probably always have, attrition and these kids who don't show up, and you'll have kids who, They may or may not do the things you want them to do. But I'll tell you this right now, if they believe in what you're doing, and they believe that you're the leader to get them there, they'll walk, I don't care. They'll crawl over broken glass and come in and clean whatever you want till midnight, right? That's what they'll do, because they have to believe in what you're trying to do and what they can become as a result of being around you as their leader, right? Does that make sense? And so one of the ways to, go ahead. Alan, were you gonna say something else?
I was agreeing with you. That's all.
Okay. Let me get an amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is igniting a desire for movement, to break out of the status quo that they have. And I'm telling you right now, these people will recruit for you inadvertently. You know, they may actively do it, but they more likely will do it because they'll be like, man, I just freaking love my job, right? Now I work with the young people at my church, and you know, this right in this age group, right, 16 to 18 in particular. And I'm telling you, these guys, you know, like I work at Mr. Putty's, you know, putt park or whatever it is, and they could give. It's not possible for them to care any less about what they're doing, right? But Mr. Putty's like this 95-year-old guy who all does is yell at them, right? You know, they just got that job because it was like, well, I don't want to be around grease, so well, you know, I'm not going to work at Chick-fil-A, so I'll go work at Mr. Putty's, you know, and all they do is screw around all day, and they don't even really work that hard, right? Now, of course, it's pre-COVID and you know whatever, right? So maybe it'd be different now, who knows? But you get what I'm saying, because that guy's done nothing to inspire them or to make them feel like they're doing something bigger in the world, right? Helping the kid understand how they're making a difference to the families that come to your park, and they understand where they fit in that wheel, right? They'll do whatever they got to do. Now, a couple other things that I know that are super helpful, and we'll just kind of start wrapping up here because I know we're coming up on time. But one, and I think someone mentioned this earlier, and I'm not going to go through the chat to find it, but I think someone mentioned this earlier. One is gratitude, right? It is telling them how grateful you are for what they're doing, how they're doing it, and being right there with them and helping them to understand that you actually care about them as a person, right? So, you know, just asking them, hey, how was your day? How's school going? You know, fine, right? But every once in a while, and it doesn't have to be anything big, it can be something small. It doesn't even have to cost you anything necessarily. But those times when you actually feel it in your heart and you go to yourself, you know what, I'm going to grab Wendy, I'm going to pull her aside, and I'm going to say, hey, Wendy, I just want you to know our mission to bring families a clean, safe place to be families and to bond as families so that we have stronger communities is so important to me. And I want you to know that these XYZ things that you did today really fulfilled that. And that really means a lot to me. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for being the kind of kid that I can trust to do that, because this mission is important to me. What we do here is important to me, right? I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, you do that 2 or 3 times a week with a couple of kids, you're done, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because every human being on the planet wants to hear that kind of stuff. You want to hear that kind of stuff. Am I right? I mean, Scott, if someone pulled you aside right now, a CEO pulled you aside right now and said, Scott, our mission at Fun Spot is so important to me, and I'm so grateful that you've embraced it, and I'm grateful for the way that you live it out every day. And man, I wish there was more that I could do to tell you how much I appreciate it.
Without a doubt, and if me at 50 some odd needs that, how much more
right?
Does a 16, 17 who likely, I'll just say likely, isn't getting that at home, right?
You're absolutely right. The chances of them having heard that anywhere in any part of their life, especially right now, I mean, if their parents are kind of crappy parents or something, right? But even after they're out of their house, right? The chances of them having heard something like that are slim, real slim. I learned, I mean, we all know that intuitively, but I learned something else from a guy who's actually the principal of my daughter's high school, right? And every morning on the morning announcements, you know what he says to these kids? He goes, all right, and they're the Falcons, right? So he says, all right, Falcons, I love you. Well, no, he says, in case nobody else has told you today, I love you, your teachers love you, and let's go get for it. Let's go for it. Let's go get at it, or whatever it is. Go Falcons, blah, 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 right? But he says that every single morning to those kids. And they adore that man. They adore that man. They will follow him into battle because they know that they're loved and appreciated. And that, I think, is probably the single biggest difference. And once you start really actually loving and appreciating the kids, you'll diffuse a little more authority to them, right? You're going to give them a little bit more job to do, and you're going to have a different feeling about them. And that's going to make a big difference in how they react to you as well, right? And it can't be a trick. So if all you can muster to say nice to them is, hey, I appreciate the job you did today, good, start there. And let that build over time. Go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say, not to mention, you have the coolest place in town to work, each and every single one of you. Every single person wants to work there. So it's at your disposal of, you get to pick of the litter of every kid that's vying for a job. They get to hang out and have fun. And every kid I've seen at the parks I've been to are just like amped up. They get to work at the coolest place in town. So each one of you own the coolest place in town. That's the gist of it right there.
It's better than Mr. Putty's.
Yeah.
That really is a place here in Fort Mill called Mr. Putty's. But anyway, so just to kind of wrap it up and ask me whatever questions or make whatever comments you want to, whatever. But like, I think the first thing is stop hiring idiots, right? Ask better questions when you're hiring them. Find out who they are, what they believe about their job. And they're not going to have good answers to begin with. And that's okay. You can coach them through that a little bit, right? And help them understand. But eventually your culture over time will change to a degree that those kids will bring other kids that believe those things that you believe, right? So making sure that you have that vision and you are, I will gladly repeat the vape for you. It starts with vision. The next is articulation. So making sure that it is clear. And as we often say, I don't need you to like it. I just need you to understand it. This is the vision. And now I'm articulating that to you, right? The P is persuasion. And now I'm going to tell you and motivate you and help you and walk you along to persuade you to understand the thing that I want out of you or the thing that I believe about you, right? And then the E is exhortation. That's what the E, I don't even know if we got to the E before, but the E is exhortation. And that means when the obstacles come, and they will, right? Guarantee it. When the obstacles come, you're going to exhort them in a forceful way to help them get through. And sometimes that means tough talk, right? With love. That's possible, right? But you're going to help get them through those obstacles, whatever they may be, including but not limited to global pandemic, right? Just a fact. So stop hiring idiots. That's number one. Make sure that you're the kind of person that engenders the trust and is worthy to be followed. You have to have a life that people want to trade for. And I don't just mean the job that you have, but they look at you and they say, that's the kind of person that I want to be. And if you're not doing those things where someone can look at you and say that, then start today. And you say to yourself, well, what kinds of things are those? Okay, well, I don't know. That's up to you, right? We can talk about that offline. You know, like you and I could have that discussion another time. I don't know, right? But whatever those things are, you've got to start laying those daily habits. The third thing is to start with your own personal purpose and make sure, again, that you have given them the vision of what that is and you've articulated it clearly. And then finally, the last one, and I think this was the most powerful, and I would say if you had one takeaway and the only thing you could possibly get out of today is real, deep love. Real, deep love with sincere gratitude for what they're doing for you. They don't have to work there. You might have a cool place to work, but you're not where it all begins and ends, right? They're doing you a favor. Remember that. They work with you because they want something more out of you. You have an opportunity to make a huge difference, not just in the lives of, the kids who come and jump and do whatever they're going to do, right? I mean, that's good. But you have a real opportunity to make a significant difference in the lives of the young people that come and work with you. And they don't have to do it. And so really appreciating them for being there and for what they do is probably one of the most important things I think that we can do for that age group in particular. So that's what I got. Ask me your questions.
I appreciate that. And we do have some time for some questions. and you started off by saying, hey, I don't have the 5 quick things that, how you engage and motivate 16 and 21-year-olds, and it really starts with me, right? It starts with me as the park owner, the park operator, and me digging deep into myself so I can find that vision, and then I can A and B and E with those that are around me. So it's really appreciate all of that. Jill was asking about percentage of staff that were coming back for parks that are reopening, and Cheryl gave a good answer that some people are seeing more than they expected. And my encouragement from what I've heard over the past couple of weeks in dealing with parks and hearing back from them is to engage now. I mean, if you haven't been engaging your staff up until now, go ahead and do it. Create a Facebook group, do a Zoom call, begin engaging your staff now so that you can begin to do some of these things. Maybe you haven't been, maybe you recognize, hey, I've got some things that I've got to do in my own life to get ready to lead this new reopening staff. I mean, it's a reset time. I mean, Brian kind of kicked it off saying, hey, we can kind of get rid of dead weight, but also it's an opportunity for us to really reset our own vision and purpose and bring people along into that. So use this time and begin reaching out, and I think you'll be surprised at what you'll find. Any final kind of thoughts or questions for Frank? He's got his information up there. I know he would be happy to answer any offline questions for you. I did want to kind of queue up both Brian and Cheryl. They didn't ask me to do this, and they don't even know I'm going to do that. But they both work also in the FEC consulting space, and so they have some tips and tricks and trainings that help you interview well and get your team through group auditions and can really help you with that. So I'll be happy to kind of kick out their information as well, along with Frank's, to give you resources. I mean, that's the whole reason we started this 6 weeks ago, was really to just be a resource for people, for park owners, and to help you really kind of navigate this. And so I really want to kind of end with a question as well. And you can, my slide will be up at the end with my email address and phone number, but would really like to hear, as parks start reopening. I mean, right now we've got Tuesdays at 2:00 open, but I'm not sure that's going to be effective weekly, in the next, 4 weeks from now, as you're engaging your guests and hopefully beginning to reopen well. So would love your feedback over the course of the next day or two on kind of frequency and date and time of the week that would be helpful with these town halls. I've got 6 or 8 more in mind that we can do on a weekly basis. We think this is something that's helpful. The feedback we're getting is good, and we don't continue to add value. So when you see my slide, if you get a chance to shoot me a note. If you want to hang out afterwards, I'm happy to hang out after the call here and chat with anybody as well as people hop off. So Frank, thank you. Appreciate your leadership, and I know I personally have been encouraged and inspired with my team. I mean, I lead a team of 10 adults, and these are all things that I need to assimilate into my life even more. So thank you for that.
Thank you guys very much, and I hope that was helpful. And again, if anybody needs anything else, I'm obviously available. Sounds like you've got some other experts in the industry as well, Cheryl and Brian, who are they probably know a lot more about leadership and certainly know more about your industry. So but yeah, the main thing is get the help.
And I could have asked Cheryl and I could have asked Brian, but I'm going to be honest. I asked you because you're outside of our industry. And I think you have a perspective of leadership that kind of shakes us, and sometimes I think it's helpful for that. And so you're on our townhall.funspot.com website. We'll have Frank's information as well. So if you had some follow-up, if you wanted to engage him in any way, I know he'd be happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. And my point was just to say the main thing is recognize you're not going through it alone, right? Get some help. Like, just ask questions. Let people help you because they want to. So.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, I appreciate again your time for clicking in with us on the Tuesday Town Hall. We'll have video replay available tomorrow afternoon on that site, as well as any resources that we've talked about and the contact information for Frank. And just look for our email and my contact information. So you can call or email me with your feedback on frequency and date and time. That would be helpful for next week. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.